logistics. We have started around this time, but half an hour, 45 minutes of question and answers and things like that. Feel free to ask questions throughout the area. Logistics is a bathroom there. If you have any questions, we have several people with Steelport shirt on, so feel free to ask us any question going in there. There's a cold brew back there in that corner if you want to do the cold brew after the break. So today's focus is around how do you take care of your knife, how do you sharpen it, how do you go through the areas. And I consider that kind of like going and praying in Vatican City if you're Catholic. You come to the factory that actually makes the knives, learn about how to take care of the knives. That's not a unique flavor. I'm the CEO and founder of Steelport, and Eytan Zias, proud to introduce it. Most of you guys know him already. It's my co-founder in this story, all of us coming together on our Bladesmith. I always open up the statement that a lot of advances we have in our knives is thanks to Eytan's over 20 years of sharpening, making knives, selling knives. But the story I'll tell everybody, I started as a busboy before he went back and learned chef. So he tells me about calluses on his hand while he was chopping hours of potatoes and onions. I haven't seen that yet, by the way. Here's anybody tapped in. So when we actually got into making our knives, there was a lot of debates because Eytan wouldn't let it go off this knife unless he was holding it, and he could hold it for hours without feeling the stuff. So the weight balance, the smoothness, all this stuff comes from Eytan's calluses before he became a chef and became a big shot we know him today. So with that, I turn it over to Eytan for our demo today. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Despite we are competing with the No Kings protest today, so I'm glad you guys showed up. But you can still make it to it afterwards. So yeah, I'm still a busboy on the inside, but yeah, I've been working with knives professionally in one way or another for 30 years now. So yeah, I started cooked for 10 years, did culinary school, that whole thing. Been sharpening professionally for 18 years, making knives for 12 years now. Some of those overlapped. I'm not that old. But yeah, so I'm completely self-taught, except for it was a 20-minute demo in culinary school in the mid-90s, which I don't count. But yeah, I'm self-taught. My interest in knives is strictly culinary. It's just knives as they relate to food. And this is how I learned to sharpen. I was cooking in New York. I didn't even know, this was a profession back then. We all used to sharpen our own knives. And then we used to go down to Corin, watch Mr. Sugai there, go back and kind of mimic his technique at our own, kitchens and everything. So this is a technique that developed just over the years. And now at my shops, we sharpen about 120 knives a day on average, sometimes a lot more. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying that if you go into my shops and watch my guys sharpen, we're using the exact same technique. So what I know today, this is the most precise and efficient way to sharpen a knife. And what we're going to be talking about today is strictly the this is practical sharpening. There's what I call sport sharpening, which, you can sit at home and you can nerd out and you can, sharpen a knife for 3 hours and then post your videos online and everything. That is an art and that is an art on its own, but that is not practical. It's not how you want to sharpen your knives. The knives that you see that are, whittling hair under a microscope and, cutting cigarette paper and all that stuff, you get about 2 cuts on a cutting board before they go dull. Right. So sharpening is actually a combination of how sharp you can get it in those terms, but also you want your edge to last. So that's kind of what we're talking about today. There's also an artistic component to sharpening, which we do, and that we get into natural stones and different it's more like traditional Japanese sharpening, where it is about the level of finish, not about the performance. And that I do appreciate, and that if you guys start sharpening, if you guys get really bored, you know, you can go down that rabbit hole. But again, that's a different conversation. And speaking of, this can be more of a conversation than a lecture, so you guys feel free to just stop me at any time. So I am going to first just sharpen a knife, just so you guys know what we're talking about while I'm talking, right? So you have a visual. It's become my little, it's almost like a little parlor trick at this point. So got a knife with no edge on it whatsoever, right? So it's a knife-shaped object, can't cut anything, doesn't have anything on it. So we're going to start from this point. I'm not going to explain what I'm doing right now because we're going to go into that in a lot more detail. I just want you guys to know what we're talking about. So so I am a professional sharpener, and I did specifically pick a knife that is easy to sharpen, right? But this is how long it takes me to sharpen my own knives at home. I would say I don't have a knife I spend more than 2 minutes sharpening when I need it. And obviously I'm not starting off when it's this dull. But then you can see all that black stuff on there. That's all the steel coming off already. So that is step one. Just took about a minute. So we went from a knife with no edge whatsoever to a knife with somewhat of an edge. So for a lot of people, this is the end result that they're looking for, but not here. Right? So this knife is probably sharper than 99% of the knives in Portland right now already, but it's not enough for us. It's not what we're looking to do, right? So it's pretty easy to get a knife to cut paper. What I'm looking for is how loud is it when I cut the paper? How much effort does it take me to cut the paper? And then if I can look at, you know, if I look at my cut, do I see little fibers? You know, how clean does it look? Right. So this will work great for, like, you know, if you're just cutting tomatoes and stuff like that, but not, again, it's not what we're looking for. So first phase was about a minute.
Do you offer classes on how to do like hands-on classes?
So we don't anymore. We used to, but the classes were 4 hours, and so this what you guys are getting today is basically the first hour of that class. And then we just figured, instead of it was just too much for people. You know, this is like a professional level class for a lot of people. We're not looking for a professional level class, and that's the only thing I know how to do, because there's a lot to it. And then, so yeah, the 4 hour classes were a lot for people, and you still have to go practice. So what we switched to is this format where it's free, and I give you all the information that you need to know, and then you guys have to go home, practice. Nothing's going to replace that, you know, muscle memory, that repetition that you have to do in order to learn how to sharpen. And then I'll just keep working with everybody. And, you know, once you bring me a knife that you sharpen, I just need to, I can look at your edge, I can feel it, I can look at your scratch pattern, I can tell you everything, you know, that you're doing right or wrong. And yeah, you have to invest a few days and just kind of sharpen all your knives, sharpen all your family's knives, friends' knives, stuff like that. Get all that work in up front, and then you can, yeah, and then and then it becomes a skill. But I like to say that sharpening is a hobby before it's a skill. And if you just do it once in a while, you're probably never going to get it down. Nobody just goes to a stone and just sharpens a knife right away. All right, so this is so yeah, phase 1 took about a minute. Phase 2 would have taken about a minute if I wasn't talking so much. It's a problem. But yeah, so we went from no edge at all to cutting paper to now we're shaving sharp, right? So yeah, nothing. Nothing I would shave my face with. We're only at medium grit here. We're at 800 grit. But I like to show people that you don't need to go all the way full polish in order to get that. Just a medium grit and a strop. And I'll probably put this edge against anybody's, 6K, 8K edge, stuff like that. And I can even just crop hairs with it. So without touching my skin, I can just treetop here, which that's what we are looking for, right? So that's how you know that it's sharp, once you can cut hair. And then obviously, if I was gonna shave with it, I would go up through the stones, but it looks exactly the same.
What grit was the first one?
That's a 400, 400 and 800, and then a leather strap with some abrasive on it. So again, I just wanted to do that real quick, just so you guys have a visual about what I'm talking about, right? Otherwise, it can get pretty boring up front. So, all right. So what did we do here? We took a knife with no edge. Chose what abrasives we wanted to work with, and then we used those to arrive at this. So you don't want to let your knives get to this point where they have no edge on them whatsoever. Most people, they'll get a sharp knife, they'll use it until it's completely unusable, and then they'll bring it in for sharpening. And that is not the way to treat a blade. The only way to actually have a sharp knife, to maintain your knife properly, is just don't let it get dull in the first place. So the theory about knife maintenance is, as soon as you don't like the way it cuts, you use your finest method that you can in order to bring your edge back, and then go about your business, right? The reason I stress that you want to use the finest method possible is because our job as knife sharpeners, as knife owners, is we just want to take off the least amount of steel possible, because that's the only thing that ages a knife, right? I have a knife that's probably 10, 15 years old, that's been sharpened hundreds of times, that is completely just dead, right? This knife is at the end of its life. This knife is, I think, about 110 years old, and it's only been sharpened a handful of times. And to me, this is a brand new knife, right? The only thing that ages a knife is steel removal. So if you care about your knives, you want to take off the least amount of steel possible. And then again, it's not, you don't get it to the point where it doesn't have an edge, because then you have to remove a lot more steel every time you sharpen it. So these are both Henkels, and I use them because I spend a good 10 minutes bad mouthing the Germans. So I like to show an example that it's not, that there used to be good German knives, right? Hasn't been about 70, 80 years, right? But there used to be really good German knives. So these are both Henkels. This is a stainless steel. This is a carbon steel, and unknown type of carbon. But they used to be really nice knives, thin. The geometry was good. You can sharpen them really easily. They used to make nice stuff. I mean, this was eBay. I think I bought a lot of knives on eBay. Yeah. Yes.
Why does it matter the type of steel you use? What's the difference between stainless and carbon?
So we use carbon steel. So first of all, with STEELPORT, we use carbon steel just because to make a knife properly, to us, a knife needs to be forged. It needs to be integral. We also want to do a differential heat treat. And you can only do these things with carbon steel, right? The only stainless steel knife that you can forge properly in like industrial sense is just a really soft, what we consider to be crappy steel. So like German steel and below. Right? So we went with carbon steel because we want to make a better knife, right? And this is the way, to us, a knife should be constructed, as opposed to just having so just like stamping out instead of stamping out a knife, we wanted to forge it. And then the reason to use carbon steel is that carbon steel sharpens better. right? So it sharpens better and easier. So it's anybody can, you know, we're at 65 Rockwell, which is extremely hard for a blade. Anybody can sharpen this. If you can sharpen a knife, you can sharpen this knife. I gave you a stainless steel blade at 65 Rockwell, you would not be able to sharpen it. You would have to get special stones for it. You have to go with CBN or diamond, and your options are pretty limited there. Yeah. So to us, you know, we wanted a hard blade so it holds an edge for a long time, but also as a sharpener, you know, we made sure that we designed our heat treat in a way that we got it very hard, but also was very easy to sharpen. So that's the reason to use carbon steel. So stainless steel is more convenient for a lot of people because it doesn't rust or stain on you. But if you want something that's gonna, you know, if you're into the more traditional side of knife making, you're gonna be using carbon steel. And if you're into sharpening and maintaining your own blades, then you can appreciate what carbon steel does for you. Within carbon steel and stainless steel, there's you know, infinite amount of different steel types, right? So you have, you know, good carbon and bad carbon, and good stainless and bad stainless, and there's a whole world out there that you can get into. But yeah, but I use carbon steel just for that reason. You know, I have knives that I haven't sharpened in years that I just, you know, I just maintain on a ceramic steel and a strop, and that's it. You know, because you can do that with carbon. I can't do that with stainless. Yeah. So yeah, so going back to maintenance though, when, you know, when I have conversations with people about sharpening, sometimes I ask them, do you do your own sharpening? A lot of people that say yes, they are talking about this, and this is not sharpening, right? And it's not their fault because these are called sharpening steels. They should not be called sharpening steels, should only be called honing rods. Honing is when you don't remove steel. You're just knocking off the burrs, realigning your edge, and then sharpening is when you are removing steel. So the lines get a little bit blurred when you get into these guys, but we have to keep everything, you know, we have to talk, we have to generalize everything today in order to get the information across. So if you're going to use a honing rod, your standard groove metal honing rod is a relic. Just like the softer German knives, this is basically just ineffective and unnecessary at this point. It only works on soft blades. So any of your modern steels, any of your, you know, custom American knives, your good Japanese knives, they're so much harder than your steel on your honing rod that this is not going to be effective, right? So I would say it's better than not using anything, but yeah, but that's about it. So, and one of these, I'll be doing this for days and not get an edge on it because I'm not removing steel, right? On the other end, I won't spend a lot of time on this. This is a diamond honing rod, so this has a synthetic diamond abrasive on it. Is technically a sharpening method, right? You can, you know, you can hear it grinding off steel, but it's a very lousy sharpening method. You just have a thin layer of abrasive that wears out really quickly, leaves you a very toothy edge. I wouldn't use this on any knife I cared about, but it is a means to an end. If you don't have, you know, if you don't have anything to sharpen, I can sharpen on this, use it like a stone. I'd probably wear out all the abrasive by the time I sharpen a knife properly on this. So yeah, I don't recommend regular steel honing rods or diamond honing rods. If you are going to use a honing rod, ceramic's the only way to go. So it's the only thing that has the finesse of a standard honing rod, but it is harder than any blade you're going to put on it. And you know, you can see that there's a little bit of, you know, metal coming off every time I use it. You see those black lines. So it's exposing a little bit of fresh steel, giving you a fresh edge every time, but it is not, yeah, it is not taking half your knife off like some of these other methods, and these things last forever. If you don't drop it, this will outlive all of us. And the idea here, I'm not going to spend too much time because we actually, once you know how to sharpen, you use these differently than if you don't know how to sharpen. So if you don't know how to sharpen, I'm prepping dinner. I take a tomato. That's your canary, right? That's the most difficult thing to cut. Start slipping a little on the tomato skin. Then I'll pick this up, do a few strokes, get my edge back, put it away until I need it again, right? Some people, every time they pick up their knife, they use a honing rod. That's just unnecessary. You're not damaging your knife because this is fine enough, but it's just unnecessary. So you use it as needed. You see people use it this way. You see, you can draw strokes. Some people only feel, it's safe to use it on the table, standing like that. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is that you do the entire blade every time, alternate strokes, and watch your angles. All right. Anybody can use a honing rod. It's very, there's not much to it. You basically learned everything you know about honing rods right now. Just a great tool that anybody can do. If you're not going to sharpen, you should at least be using this. And then again, once you have the knowledge of the sharpening process, then we use these a little bit differently. But yeah, so ceramic's a great tool. Forget about all the rest of them. As far as actual sharpening, so the technique is a lot more important than what you use to sharpen, right? There's we used to have a very famous bladesmith in Oregon named Murray Carter. He had the most boring sharpening videos you've ever seen in your life. Amazing bladesmith, amazing sharpener. Very kind of tedious, tedious videos. What he did that was great. That I think, that I really think he added to the conversation is he would show you how to sharpen on Japanese water stones, and then he took literally a cinder block and a piece of cardboard, and he mimicked the same technique just to show you that the technique, is more important than anything, right? So if you have the technique already, right, then I'll tell you what you need to be using. So if you are not using Japanese style water stones and you're sharpening knives, you're not doing it right at this point, right? And I use the word Japanese style as opposed to Japanese water stones because that is a type of water stone construction that was, developed by the Japanese, but is and they still make the best ones. But there are other countries, other places that make the same style. So what makes this different than your standard oil stone that you can buy at the hardware store, or what I was taught on back in the day, where those tri-stones that you see at all kitchens and butcher shops and hotels and stuff, is these are a renewable abrasive, and that's very important to us, right? It's the way these sharpen is you have an abrasive, which is what does the cutting, right? And that works just like any other type of abrasive. So if you guys think of sandpaper, the larger the abrasive, the more it removes, the coarser it is. And then if you want to get finer, then it removes less material and leaves you your finer edge, right? So that works exactly the same way. The problem with these, diamond stones, oil stones, all your standard kind of old school style stones is that once you kill the abrasive, there's no way to refresh it, right? So you'll just get an oil stone, you'll just glaze it over, it'll stop cutting, and then you're done, right? So the way the Japanese style stone works is you have an abrasive in a binder, and then the binder breaks down to keep releasing new abrasive. So a good example is this stone's not even new. It started off a little bit larger than that. We use them till they're about this size and they crack on us, right? But I can still use this stone. Using this stone is exactly the same as using this stone. It's the same abrasive, same surface, same everything, right? So as a professional sharpener, I'll go through, I'll go through a coarse stone every 6 months, medium stone every year and a half. Takes me 2-3 years to go through a polishing stone. For a home user, that's several lifetimes, right? So you really get a lot for your money when you get the Japanese style stones because you can just use them until they're done, right? And the way we do that is we have a we call a stone flattener, or a stone fixer, or a lapping stone. And when we get this, every time I sharpen, I'll just run it across the stone, make sure it's flat, keep my corners down. That's how your stones chip, is when they get too sharp on the corners, and then go about my business, right? So if every time I take out my stone, I'll do a pass on it, make sure that I got it, you know, make sure that it's flat. I can do, you know, 1 or 2 passes, see that it's flat, not have to do it again. If I had to sharpen all these knives, for example, I'd probably stop 2 or 3 times during my sharpening process and reflatten all my stones. You can't get a crisp edge without a flat stone. If your stone is bowed out, it's just going to round everything out. You're going to, you know, convex edges have their place, but it is not a, you know, that's not what we're looking to do, right? So another thing about these flattening stones, you have, you know, a bunch of different, you know, stones for flattening. We use these cheap ones. They're like $20. They work on everything that we use. This prevents you from having to use a slurry stone. This is called a Nagura stone in Japanese. And this is a stone just to create mud on your stone, because having a little abrasive on your abrasive helps you sharpen, keeps your stone clean. There's a bunch of, you know, a bunch of reasons to use this. When you get into like the Japanese single bevel, stuff like that, you need a very muddy surface. So a lot of sharpeners, they'll have a different Nagura stone with different grits for every stone that they use. Completely unnecessary in my opinion, because I have to flatten my stone anyway. If I use a good flattener that's not going to roughen my stone, then I'll just run it on it before I sharpen, and I already have a natural slurry from the stone. This is the same abrasive that I'm already using, so this prevents me from having any extra stuff, right? This is already, right? This is already that slurry. So with polishing stones specifically, I always flatten before I sharpen. You have abrasive on your abrasive, hits all your high spots and your low spots, you know, keeps everything moving.
Is there a wrong way to flatten your stone?
No, as long as it's flat, it's good. I have one guy at the shop, one of my sharpeners. He's all his stones look like cheese wedges. They're just like, he puts pressure. You know, I always try to rotate them, right? Because you're naturally going to lean to one side or backwards or forward. All his stones will look like that, but they're perfectly flat. They work for him. Yeah. So as long as they keep them flat, you know. And if you're really, really concerned with flatness, if you're doing straight razors, salon shears, stuff like that, then sometimes what we do is we'll just take a pencil, mark a grid on the stone, and then that'll tell you if it's perfectly flat or not, right? So if my pencil marks come out, then I know it's flat. If I still see marks anywhere, then I know I need to surface the rest of the stone in order for it to catch up to that spot. Okay. For knives, I can visually see if I have if my stone is flat or not, because I'll still have metal deposits. The surface will look different. So yeah, but some people are just a lot more particular than I am, and yeah, so they'll do, you know, they'll mark grids. For them, this will not be sufficient, because these stones wear too, and they might not wear completely evenly. So then they'll go to diamond plates, you know, which don't dish out. But yeah, for my purposes, this is basically all I use, and these are great. Yeah. Yeah. So Japanese water stones. We have 2 main types. So we have your natural stones and your man-made stones, right? It's exactly what it sounds like. Your natural stone, this is a very specific type of rock from a specific deposit in a specific mine. Somebody more knowledgeable than me could spend, you know, a full day on, you know, talking about natural stones. I am not a believer in natural stones. I don't find a purpose for them. I think it's cool to sharpen on them, and that's about it. You're getting style points. You know, you feel cooler, you look cooler. From a practical standpoint, these are very unpredictable. They're expensive. They're slow. And you need a much higher level of sharpening proficiency in order to get good results with these. So I do own some natural stones that I'll guard with my life, because I learned how to use them, and I don't want to learn how to use any other stones. So you can have a stone from the same mine with the same name and everything, same color, they'll react differently, and you have to use them differently. But yeah, I feel that everything I can personally do on a natural stone, I can do better with a man-made stone. Just if you know how to do it. It's adjusting pressure, it's the right amount of slurry, it's the right type of stone. So yeah, we're gonna gonna leave the natural stones alone for today. Otherwise, we're going to talk about the other two kinds of stones. So then you have your clay stones and ceramic stones. And these are just names, but that's what we call them. So this is a clay stone, dipped it in water. It's already bone dry, right? So these stones are very thirsty. They have to be fully saturated in water before you can use them. Which is very easy. If I was going to use them, I do use some clay stones, and I just keep them in my water full time. That way it's always ready when I need them. If you don't sharpen a lot, it doesn't make sense to store them. You have to keep changing the water once in a while so they don't get moldy. So you just need to plan ahead 20 minutes or so, depending on the size of stones, when you use them last, all that stuff. So yeah, clay stones, if they absorb water, it's considered a clay stone. And if they don't absorb water, just take this, I'll dip it in water, and it's going to sit there until it evaporates. Right. So we use these exactly the same. There's no functional difference. It's kind of like, carbon and stainless, where like, okay, one has chromium and one doesn't, but there's a whole world of different, types of stones. And, steels, it's the same thing. You have, within the ceramic ones and the clay ones, you have a bunch of different abrasives, different binders that, so they're all very different. I only mention this because we use water only, no matter what. You can't use oil on any of these stones. It just clogs the pores and they stop working. And it is very important to know what kind of stone you have, because if you have a clay stone, you can't just go sharpen. It's not ready. If you have a ceramic stone and you leave it in the water with your clay stones, over time you will ruin those stones. Okay. Luckily, it is the world's easiest test, as I showed you. So just know what you have. If you're going to buy stones, I'd recommend just going ceramic, just because it's so much easier at this point. There's no reason not to. Right. All right. So, like I said, the grits work like sandpaper. So the lower the number, the larger the abrasive, the coarser they are. These are going to sound, these numbers are going to sound random, but these are industry standard. So up until 320 grit, I would consider that extra coarse. They are just for doing major repairs, taking out, chips, fixing tips, reprofiling blades. There is nothing you're going to do in the regular course of knife using that you're going to need a stone that coarse. And I would highly recommend not getting one unless you're planning to do your own repairs. People take off way too much steel. If you are just learning how to sharpen, I would much rather you use a less efficient stone and take longer to sharpen, because then you are developing that muscle memory and you're doing less damage to your knife. Yeah, so anything under 320, major repairs only, reprofiling, big chips, that's it. I'd recommend against it. Medium coarse is 400 to 600 grit. This was a 400 grit that I started out with. And that is not a necessity, but it is a good tool to use. So if you tend to get little chips in your blades, like if you own Schuns, you're going to need one of these. I'm not picking on the Germans. I'm picking on Schuns, by the way. It's my two hobbies. So yeah, little chips, really dull knives. If you're sharpening for friends and family, you're going to need a medium coarse stone. Just speed up the process, because you don't have any control over what people are giving you, right? If somebody gives you a very thick, dull blade, you want to speed that up. So 400 to 600, great tool. You don't have to have it. The only necessity is a medium grit stone. So anything 800 to 1500 grit is completely interchangeable. You're not going to have an 800 and a 1200 and a 1500. They're the same stone. We call those all medium grit. We tend to call them all 1000 grit because that's the standard. And that is the only stone that you have to have. You can start and finish an edge on one of these. And that's the only stone that you can do that with. So if you have a medium grit stone and a flattener, that is all you need, right? There are a million different accessories that you can have. sink bridges and this, and, again, Nagura stones and stone holders and all that stuff. It's nice to have, strops, all that stuff. You should be able, if you can't sharpen using these, you can't sharpen, right? The rest are crutches. So I like people to start with the basics, and then you add stuff afterwards just to improve your sharpening. But you're not going to learn if you're using a strop, for example, because that cleans up all your mistakes, right? So yeah, medium grit, flattener, those are the only necessities. And then you have polishing stones. So polishing stones start at about 3,000 grit. They go up as high as you can imagine these days. People just keep coming out with new higher grit stones because I think people have a fundamental misunderstanding of how polishing stones work. And if you guys seen Spinal Tap, it's like the amp that goes up to 11, right? So it's like people think that their knives are going to magically be sharper if they use a higher grit stone. So they're going to have, if my edge sucks on a 1,000 grit stone, I'm just going to grab an 8,000 stone. It's going to be magically better. It works the other way, right? So if your sharpening is pretty basic still, you can get away with using coarser stones, because if your angle's off, it just cuts a new angle on, right? Once you get to the polishing stones, if your technique's not good, then you're just going to be over polishing. You're going to be rounding out all your edges, and they're going to look pretty. They're going to pass a few tests, but they're not going to slice anything properly. All right. So polishing stones are great if you want a way to touch up your knives without taking off too much steel, right? And if you're really into your knife cuts, then everybody is, everybody uses knives differently, right? Knives are tools. There's no right or wrong there. Some people are just, just animals, and they're gonna want something like this, and they're gonna spatchcock a chicken, and then cut some carrots, and then throw in the sink overnight, and that's fine, right? So they're gonna want to leave their knives with a coarser edge that will just cut when they need to cut. And then some people are just into, they're into the knife cuts, right? And they're gonna have, thin, hard blades. They're gonna put big polished edges, low angles, because that's how they function, right? If you're into knife cuts, you want something that you don't have to use as a saw, because a coarse edge is, a toothy edge is a microscopic saw. You're going to have to move that way, as opposed to having a fully polished edge where you're not sawing through food, you're displacing matter, right? You can just push through everything, right? So that's when you're going to want to polish. If you're more into your knife skills, want to get your knives as sharp as possible, then you're going to go with polishing stones. You only go with polishing stones if you have a higher quality steels, right? So it has nothing to do with the price, right? For my sharpening service, I deal with people all day. I mean, they make Whetstones that cost $600 now, right? It's still a Whetstone. It's the same steel. So people come in and they want me to hand sharpen their Whetstone, and I tell them no, and they're like, "But I paid $600 for it. It doesn't matter how much you paid for it. It's about steel and its angles, right?" So I like to use, these examples. This is a $45 knife, right? But it's carbon steel. It's thin. It's constructed horribly, right? But functionally, it's great, right? It's a thin, hard blade, which is all I'm looking for in a knife, right? So I can go full polish on a $45 knife, but if you bring me in a $200 Henkel's or something, you never want to go past medium grit, because you give me a Henkel's, I'll go up to 8,000 grit, make it the prettiest Henkel's you've ever seen in your entire life. You get about 3 minutes use on a cutting board before it goes dull. So soft steels cannot sustain a polish. Thick blades cannot sustain a polish.
So
Yes.
The old Henkel's knife, because it's carbon steel, would you do that? Or
I can, but it will. I still wouldn't on this, because it's still going to be soft, right? So when people used to talk about stainless versus carbon, all we had in mind was the European knives, right? And stainless knives from Europe were unsharpenable, right? And the carbon steel knives would sharpen so easily. I could grind this on a honing rod because it's so soft, right? So the European knives are very soft. It wasn't until we started using the Japanese knives, right? And it's not that they changed anything. It's not that they just, back in the day, we were using Japan the same way we're using China now, just for cheap manufacturing, right? And they weren't, the knives that they were using personally were not the knives that they were selling us, right? And once we started getting the real Japanese knives, then we were like, oh my God, you can have a carbon steel knife that's easy to sharpen, that is rock hard, right? So yeah, this is still going to be too soft. Yeah, I can put a nice polish on it. It'll, function, it'll hold it way longer than this, but it's still, probably in the low 50s. So I keep talking about hardness. I'll give you a little context here. So Rockwell hardness is what we measure steel hardness with. It's the C scale specifically, and then every knife that you get is going to be 50 or higher, right? So the Germans used to be the best. They'll be at about 50. I think they top out at 57 now. 58. I think Wusthof has a 58 Rockwell now. Which is not bad now. They used to be more in like the, it's probably going to be like a 54 or something. Your cheap Chinese-made knives, stuff that you go to the restaurant supply store and buy, those are going to be in the low 50s, 52, 53. Your basic Japanese knives start at about 58 to 59. It's pretty rare to see those. Most of them are going to be 60, 62, right, which is already considered very hard for a blade. Then you have your premium knives, your handmade knives. Again, for us, we're at 65 on Steelport, and the only way we can get away with it is because it is carbon steel and we do a differential heat treat, right? So we leave the spine soft for durability and we have the edge hard for performance. Yeah, so, and then they top out, the scale tops out at 70. Once you get close to 70, the knife's pretty much unusable. Right, it'll just chip too easily. It's not gonna, yeah, you won't be able to sharpen it. So that's what we're talking about. So I would say anything, yeah, anything below like 59, 60 Rockwell, I would not put past 1,000 grit. Yeah, and then if you're using, for like a pocket knife, stuff that all I'm doing is cutting up boxes and doing stuff like that with, I want just an aggressive edge, I'll leave mine at like 400 to 600. Grit. My pocket knife right now, in fact, has 0 edge on it because I use it just to scrape stuff off metal and stuff like that. And I use it more as a pry bar than a knife. So again, you can have different edges and that. But the beauty of doing your own sharpening is that everybody uses knives differently, and you can customize your edges to the way you cut. Right. So 2 of us can take the same knife and put completely, or 5 of us can take the same knife and put 5 completely different edges on it. That will function differently and will suit us the best, right? Because everybody uses knives differently, right? So you might want, the only thing that sharpeners agree on, if I had any other sharpeners in this, they would have interrupted me 50 times at this point and tell me that my information is incorrect, and and some of my information isn't correct. I just promise you that I believe it, though, right? The only thing that knife sharpeners agree on is that a coarser edge lasts longer than a finer edge, right? And the reason is, if you take down sharpening to its basics, a dull knife looks rounded. What we're trying to do is remove steel from both sides to create the finest point possible that we can, right? So if you go with a polishing stone, if you achieve something that's fully polished, which doesn't exist, by the way, all these edges, if you look at them under a microscope, they all look like a mess, right? This is just what we can see visually. So if you go full polish, you're relying on just that fine point to do your cutting. That rounds out really quick, and then you have kind of like a ballpoint pen type of edge on there. It looks pretty. It's still thin. It's just going to slide all over everything. The coarser the stone, the deeper the scratches, the more teeth you have, right? So if you have some tooth behind your edge, then it just keeps cutting, right? You have more to go through before you're dull. So yeah, so a lower grit edge will absolutely last longer than a finer edge. It's just a matter of how do you want to use your knife, how you use, what you do for maintenance. If I keep a fine edge on it, then I'll just use my strap or my honing rod constantly just to maintain it so it doesn't go dull. Right. But yeah, that's about it. You know, we have you know, diamond stones. Again, this is a non-renewable abrasive. You have a single layer of abrasive here. If I use this for, you know, again, I get 6 months out of this. I would get maybe 2 or 3 days out of this. This is $100 stone. This is a $60 stone. Yeah, 3 days and kill it. You know, I'm left with just a smooth piece of steel again. These are great for flattening your other stones. So that's about it. Vitrified diamond stones are the future. This is 10 years from now. This is all I'm going to talk about, hopefully. Right now, they haven't been able to get the price down on these to make them affordable. This is a $750 stone. Yeah, so I would only recommend it for professional use. You're not, you know, you don't need this at home. But this, you know, cuts like diamond, wears like diamond, feels like a clay stone. So this is the future, but the amount of abrasive that goes in there is so expensive. It's impossible to make them affordable at this point. So, all right, but that is basically it as far as the equipment that we're going to be using. I like to sharpen over a tub of water just because I can, you know, keep my stones clean and my knife clean and everything. You don't have to. You can just sharpen on your table. You know, if you don't have a base, you know, or one of these universal bases, just put on a wet towel. You need height, grab a 2x4. You can. There's workarounds for everything. Last thing that I use is this strop. This is a leather strop with a diamond abrasive on it. So 1 micron diamond, very fine, very efficient. And I use this to finish my sharpening and just in between, you know, in between uses. If I just need a little touch up, I can just, you know, touch it up on this. Bent strops come from the woodworking world where you need to keep everything really flat. And these are great for knives, your standard, you know, what you guys are picturing when someone says strop. Those are good for straight razors, and that's about it. Yeah.
Can you compare using a strop versus using the polishing stone?
I can't sharpen on a strop. It just has a little bit of abrasive just to add to the abrasiveness of the leather, and it's just going to refine my edge. It's just going to clean it up a little bit. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to create any kind of polish with it. Yeah. All right, and then yeah, should probably get to the sharpening part. Yeah, different types of construction we can talk about, but I'll focus on the sharpening part, and then we can talk about, you know, knife construction if you guys have interest in that. So back to sharpening after all that. And I know it's a lot of information, but you have to know it, otherwise you're not gonna know where to start even. So always use water. As far as technique, you know, again, we use the technique that we showed you. It's the most efficient way that we know how at this point. There's a big debate, you know, do you sharpen a knife going forward? Let me use my other knife. We'll use this. All right. Yeah, do I sharpen a knife going forwards or going backwards? You know, do I do trailing strokes or do I do forward cutting strokes? Doesn't matter, right? It's like, you know, 2 guys sitting in a bar arguing about, you know, is, you know, Coors or Budweiser better, right? It's the same stuff. The reason it doesn't matter is, you know, you can sharpen a knife like this, right? Or like this. We call it grandma style or Boy Scout style or a bunch of other unflattering names for this. It is a very inefficient way to sharpen a knife. You will eventually get a knife sharp, but when you get into these kind of large bevel knives, if you want anything to look good, keep your angles low, stuff like that, it's very difficult to do, and it is a very slow process. All right. As sharpeners, we're looking to remove all the variables. We're looking to be as machine-like as possible. And the way to do that is, you know, if I do this, right, every time I pick up the knife, put it down, it's going to be slightly different angle, right? So, and it's slow to do this every time, right? So in order to speed up the process, make it more efficient, I sharpen one side at a time and back and forth, all right? So the first thing that you have to learn when you sharpen is how to move your knife back and forth while keeping a consistent angle, all right? And the way I do that is I lock my wrist I make everything here is just one plane, right? And then the only movement is elbow and shoulder. So you're trying to make yourself as machine-like as possible. And the way I do it is, you know, you see people, they'll do, you know, this side here, and then they'll stand over here for the other side, and I don't move around, okay? So I stand centered to my stone. I keep my elbows in, and if you watch my body from here up, you shouldn't be able to tell which way I'm sharpening, which side, what technique I'm using. Everything is the same from here up. The only difference is in my wrist, okay? So I'm gonna hold a knife as if I'm gonna use it for cooking, right? Proper knife use, if you're holding your knife like a hammer, don't, right? You can't cut like this. Proper knife use is, you know, pinch grip, 2 fingers above the bolster at least. I go more, but yeah, 2 fingers above the bolster, and the rest is just for support, okay? If I hold a knife like this, I never have to change my grip, okay? I can do anything I want to do with a knife. I never have to change my grip. Same with sharpening, all right? I see a lot of sharpeners, you know, halfway through the process, they're holding the knife like this, and, you know, you can't, again, you can't use it like this. Maintain good practices throughout all your knife use, all right? So I'm going to hold it like this. I like to put a finger on the spine here. It just gives me more clearance. But the key is you lock your wrist, only motion is here, all right? So first step is I just need to keep a consistent angle, be as machine-like as possible. That comes with practice and locking your wrist. The danger is when if your wrist is floppy, when you move it like this, you're going to convex your edge. You're just going to scratch it up. Okay, so, all right. And then sharpening is, it's a weird mix of maintaining a consistent edge and rolling with the curve. Okay, so let's say I'm at 15 degrees here. This is 15 degrees, this is 15 degrees. Okay, I'm just following the natural curve of the blade. If I have a blade with a recurve, I'm going to follow it that way, right? So I need to follow the natural curve of the blade. This is not a higher angle. I'm just flowing with it. Okay, so all I want to do when I hit my tip is I'm just going to lift my elbow and I'm going to make contact with it, right? So again, technique wise, you know, if you do this, right, I'm already halfway there before you even get started. Okay, so less variables, more efficiency, and then yeah, and then so that is the basis of the technique, and then we use both hands to do the exact same thing, right? So yeah, that's probably the most common question is, oh, do you sharpen going in or with the waist strokes, right? Second most common is what angle do you sharpen your knife at, right? And that is, unfortunately, that's a moving target. There is no specific angles for knives. That's really just a marketing trick. I blame Shun for it because they were the ones that, you know, they came out and said, you know, oh, you know, our knives have 16-degree angles. That's what makes them so good. You know, you have to sharpen them at 16 degrees. And then, you know, you go to Williams-Sonoma and buy a Shun and you love it and you dull it. And then you call me up and said, I have a Shun. Can you sharpen it at 16 degrees for me? And I'll tell you no, right? And the main reason is I'm a freehand sharpener. I don't use any angle guides or anything. So I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you what angle I'm sharpening at, right? But the main thing is I'll look at the knife and I'll look at the user, right? So let's say 2 people come in with the same knife, and it's a Shun, so it's at 16 degrees, right? The first person comes in, just again, absolute animal, like, you know, blades all just missing chunks. It's all, you know, edges rolled, chipped, everything. Why would I give him back a 16-degree edge if he can't handle a 16-degree edge, right? So I'll take his 16 degrees, I'll raise it to 20, give him back a sharp knife, right? He's happy, I'm happy, you'll get much more use out of it, right? Second person comes in, edge is pristine, just dull, right? I'll look at them and I'll be like, okay, you can handle a sharper knife. I'll take your 16 degrees, I'll go down to 12 degrees, right? And I'll give them back a sharper knife. They're happy, I'm happy, right? So angles are fluid, right? You decide what angles you want on your knife within the limitations of the hardness and, you know, for it, right? You know, again, it's a $45 knife. I can go down to, you know, 6-8 degrees per side on this and still have it functional. If I did it on a Henkel's, it would literally just fold over, right? So if you have a harder knife, you know, it's up to you. So within those limitations, but yeah, so you're gonna so angles are fluid. The way we do it is we assess it visually. So if you watch us sharpen, we're constantly cleaning off the blade, looking at our edge. But sometimes you get knives that are already scuffed up, right? Or you're just you have bad eyes like I do, or you have you just don't have the experience to know what your stone looks like, right? I know what the shine on every stone looks like at this point because I've been doing this for a while. So what we do is with new sharpeners is we do the Sharpie trick. All right, so I'm gonna mark my edge, and that's another reason to use carbon steel is you don't have to mark your edge because you already have patina on it, so you can tell exactly what's hitting the stone and what isn't. But if I don't have, you know, if it's stainless and it's scuffed up, or if I'm just starting out, then I will mark my edge, right? And now everything that makes contact with the stone is going to remove marker, right? So it tells me exactly what I'm doing, if I'm doing it right and if I'm doing it wrong, right? So the reason I mark so high is what I'm looking for is, you know, let's say I start too high, right? A lot of people think a knife has a 45-degree angle on it for some reason. You know, I go 90, 45, do a few test strokes, look at my edge, looks exactly the way I left it because I didn't hit the bevel. All I did was just take my edge off, way too high, right? I'm at about 10 or 15 degrees on this. So then I'll start lowering it. And notice that I'm not wiping my blade off anymore. I'm just dipping it in water to keep it clean. Now I have a nice little shiny edge there, right? Which is what I'm looking for. So getting closer to where I want to be. I'll lower it. Okay, it looks the way I want it to look. I have nice clean black sides here. I have an even bevel here. But if I look closer, I still have marker on my tip and I have marker on my heel. Right? So that means that those are the most neglected parts of sharpening. A lot of old knives, they'll just flatten out and then curve the other way. It's literally how the tournay knife was invented. Bad sharpening, you know, the bird's beak knives. Somebody took a petty or a paring knife, sharpened the hell out of it, bowed it out, and then the French realized it was good for turning vegetables, right? But we don't want that on a chef knife because we want to be able to maintain that curve. So I'll just make sure that I go all the way back, lift my elbow, same angle, so I hit the front, and now I have a consistent bevel, not scuffing up, and that's where I want to be. So this is the reason I marked so high is because, you know, we're all starting out, so we're going to make mistakes, right? So what if I get too low, right? Then it looks like that, right? Which is not what I'm looking for. If my technique is bad and I didn't lock my wrist, right? So I'm going to do this kind of mashing thing on there, and then, you know, and then I'll go up that high, right? Which is what most people do, which is not the, you know, it's not the end of the world, but, you know, you're doing some cosmetic damage and you are not hitting your edge, so you're not sharpening your knife, right? If I'm sharpening, I'm constantly stopping, looking at my edge. If it looks like that, I have to stop what I'm doing, correct my technique, and go back to sharpening. Now, I'm not going to know if I fixed it or not until I dry my blade off, mark it again, and then go back to what I was doing. And then again, you know, I already explained what I want it to look like, right? There's no shame in using marker. You know, I'm also a shear sharpener. I mark every pair of shears because they're wildly different. Yeah, because they're wildly different. So I mark every single pair of shears. Permanent marker is not permanent, right? Nail polish remover, acetone, goof off, whatever you want, will take your marker off. So don't be afraid to mark your good knives when you start sharpening those. So yeah, marker is your friend. It tells you everything you want to know about your sharpening. So I've determined my angles, right? And if I want a more durable edge, I go with a higher bevel. If a higher angle, if I want more finesse, I'm going to go lower. All right. And then, so we know how to do that. We know how to keep an angle. And then the third most popular question is how long does it take to sharpen a knife, right? And that's like, how long is a piece of string, right? There are too many variables for it. There's no answer for that. People want that, that. You see people that they go, it's a big, it's a big online community of sharpeners that they all have their systems that I do 30 strokes on this and 20 on this and all that. Every knife's different. Every sharpening's different. Again, I've been doing this. I've been trying to make this as consistent as possible for the past 30 years, and I cannot, right? Every knife is different. So another reason why we use this technique is we sharpen one side at a time, all right? And again, I joked about the variables, but it's how thick is your blade, how dull is your edge, how much pressure you're putting, and how coarse is your stone, all right? So if I sharpen one side at a time, then there's steel coming off, right? You guys saw, that's not Sharpie, right? I had the same black on there before I Sharpied it. So steel is coming off, but when I cross over, all right, dull knife, sharp knife, okay, I'm looking to remove steel until my edge forms, right, until my planes meet. And then when I get to a certain point, there's steel coming off, but it starts to fold over a little bit. And that's called a burr. So the burr happens when we don't want it, right? It happens on a sharp edge when we're using it, right? It's considered edge damage. Now we are specifically looking to form that burr because that tells me exactly when to stop. So once I got that burr, and it's just a little lip of metal. It's called a wire edge too because it sits like a wire on there, or it can come off like a wire when you're deburring. Once I do that, I'm done with the sharpening process. Okay, so a lot of the Japanese knives are going to be sharpened on one side only. If I had one of these single-sided knives, I would be done with the sharpening, with the metal removal portion of the process. This is a double-sided knife, so I'm just going to sharpen the other side, right? And another reason that I don't count strokes is because the first side's going to take longer. You're creating a corner. Cutting corners is not just a saying. It is, it is quicker. So my burr is going to flip over almost immediately. I'm just going to make my sides look the same. If I'm going for a 50-50 edge, it doesn't matter if I'm at 45-55, anywhere close to there, I'm good. But my burr is going to flip over. I'm going to make my edges look visually the same, right? And then my burr is on this side, and now I'm done with the sharpening process, okay? So I took a dull knife, removed metal here, created my point. It's not going to cut anything still because it has that burr hanging off it, right? So now I am going to switch techniques, and you can do it with both hands, okay? But in this point, it is quicker to do it with one hand, so I'm going to switch techniques. And what I'm doing now is I'm doing the exact same angle. If I was at 15 degrees here, I'm at 15 degrees here, but I'm alternating strokes. And I'm not applying any pressure. I'm just making contact. I can sharpen a knife like this. It's slow, but it's possible, right? So if I keep applying pressure here, I'm just going to be taking off more steel and more steel and more steel, and I'm never going to be without a burr because I keep forming a new one, right? So what I'm doing here is every stroke is going to flip that burr over until it gets weak and it falls off. It's going to get cut off. It's going to fall off. Either way, it's gone, right, is what I'm looking for. So I'll sharpen it, I'll just, you can't this is called a stropping technique because on a strop, you'll only go this way. It's good habit. Here again, you can go forward, but if I'm going to strop afterwards, I'm going to get confused. And if I go forward on my leather, I'm just going to cut it. So for this, I do like just trailing strokes, but either way, I am going to use it. I am going to strop until my burr is gone. And then I have an edge. All right. And the way you test if you have an edge or not is, again, you can take paper if you know what you're looking for. And, so that is a coarse edge because I used a coarse stone, right? So if you know what you're looking for, paper can tell you a lot. The best way, once you have experience, is you just always feel your edges before you use them, right? When I'm sharpening, I feel them. Before I cut something, I feel it. And that'll teach you everything you want to know. Right, so your brain's going to make the correlation. Yeah.
Is there
Yeah, so
Can you demonstrate that?
yeah. So you can see this is, so this is, this is pretty loud, right? And then if I go, I'll jump straight to polishing. So a lot of people think that they need to do very small jumps. I'm jumping here 400 to 3,000, which would be considered blasphemy by the online community. But if it works, it works. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so all I'm doing is I'm refining. The first stone that you use, no matter what it is doing all the work, right? So I can't sharpen a knife using this. There is steel coming off, but all it's taking off is just those deep scratches. It's refining my scratches, right? And that's basically all you're doing is your first stone is going to create an edge, and then you're going to refine your edge by reducing your scratch pattern on there, basically your teeth.
How do you know if a knife is two-edged or two-sided or single-sided?
I'll show you. Yeah, I'll show you in a second here. Yeah. So then I'll go polishing, and I'll go leather. And again, a lot of people, they really, I mean, you can nerd out on anything if you want. Straps are one of those. Kangaroo is the best leather. It goes based on silica content and based on their diet pretty much. So kangaroo leather, skin has the highest silica content. So that's considered to be the best strap. After that, it's horse. And there's this whole, Noah's Ark of poor animals, that you can use for straps. None of that matters when you load it with abrasive. And then, that. So if I do this, should be a lot quieter. Right? It should be a lot quieter. I can zigzag through it, And if I looked at both cuts, this cut should be pretty clean, and the other one would have just a little bit of fibers on it. Yeah. For home use, every month or two. Yeah, so this is very different. You basically shake up. There's a bunch of sediment down there, which is your abrasive. You'll shake it up. You'll put a very light spray on it, a couple of coats the first time, and then you let it dry completely for a few hours. And then it's not like it's not like an oil or a water or something that you would apply to your stones all the time while you're sharpening. So you put it on there. This is a brand new strop. The last leather, I make these with replaceable tops. Let's say I use my last top I moved to Oregon 11 years ago, and I used the same strop up until about 6 months ago, where my friend tried to talk me into using a different abrasive, and he ruined it. So I just grabbed a new piece of leather, right? So this one's brand new. And then so you can see the white on the white stuff here, that's the abrasive. This is going to turn black on me. And then when you see more black than white on there, then you just, I don't even clean it. I just keep building layers. So then I'll put another spray on there, let it rest for a few hours, and then I can use it. For professional use, the guys at my shop, they do it every 2-3 days. They refresh their straps. For my, own personal straps, I do it every couple months. Yeah, and it holds. Yeah, and this is something that you would do at the end of the process, right? So if I would never use this, like I just went from 400 to 3,000. I would never strop this after my 400, because I'm just going to erase everything with my next stone, right? But if you guys, instead of a strop, if I want to leave my edge toothy, because this is going to refine my edge, right? Then I'll just take a towel and I'll just take off all the little burrs and clean it off with a towel. And here angle doesn't matter because there's no abrasive. If this does your edge, you did something wrong, right? So all this is going to do is just pull off little bits off your edge, and but the way to tell if your knives are and I'm running long here, by the way. I don't have anywhere to be, so you guys can hang out as long as you want. and I can keep talking. But yeah, the way you know if your knife is double or single-sided is any German style knife. Yeah. Yeah. The, yeah. Yeah, you guys are on your own time now, but you guys can hang out. Yeah. Yeah.
For a complete novice, what would a beginner setup look like?
So just that, right? And then what's that? So this is 1,000 and a flattener, right? And that is, again, you can start and finish a blade on it. If you are very, if your knives are in really bad shape, then you have the option of going with the quartz stone. Or if you don't think you're going to need it again, you can just have somebody just sharpen your knives, and then you go straight to the maintenance part. Right? So we do a lot, so I, as my, here's my shameless plug portion, I guess, is of the Portland Knife House on Belmont. We have a full selection of stones there. And then the way we recommend stones is we'll ask you, what are you sharpening? First thing, right? So if you're only sharpening, Japanese carbon steels, I'd recommend one stone for you. If you're only sharpening, stainless German knives, I'd recommend a stone. But if you have a mix of both, then I'll recommend something else, right? So we always ask you what you're going to be sharpening. And then if your knives are in really bad shape, I'll be like, okay, just forget about, don't spend money on our hand sharpening. Get these machines sharpened, and then you have your angles and everything, and then you go straight to the maintenance, part of it. Unless you think you're going to be needing those core stones again, sometimes it's good to have a professional do a reset for you. Yeah. But that's really all you need. Yeah. Oh yeah, and I also mentioned that you use it differently. You use the honing rod differently if you know how to sharpen, right? And then I'll answer the how do you tell if your knife is single-sided or not. So now that you guys understand the concept of sharpening, right? So again, sharpening is creating a burr and removing a burr. That's all there is to it. It's not rocket science. People assign it way more. They think it's way more complicated than it is, right? My favorite sharpening quote is, at the end of the day, you're just rubbing steel on a rock, right? When I'm sharpening, I'll use, I'll take a dull knife, sharpen one side, create a burr, sharpen the other side, create a burr, remove that burr, okay? That's sharpening in a nutshell. And again, the inefficient way is just to go like that, right? So same thing, but if you don't know what you're doing, you don't need to know what you're doing. If you're just gonna, if you're just gonna do this, right? So what most people do is they just take their knife, they use this until they get, till they get lucky and create an edge, and that's it. Once you understand the concept, so the way I use these is I'll take one side, and I said you have to alternate strokes, right? Well, in this case, I'm going to use hard pressure on one side, I can feel that little tiniest burr on there, right? And then I'll do harder strokes on the other side, make sure my burr flip to the other side, right? And again, these only work on sharper knives. So, your knife is going to have an edge on it. I can't do it on a fully dull one. So again, sharpen one side, sharpen the other side, and now I'm going to go back to this to remove that burr. So as long as your angles are consistent, right? Because with here, if I'm at 15, I have to sharpen at 15. I have to deburr at 15. Same with this, right? I'll do this at 15 degrees, and I'll do this at 15 degrees, and then your knife's happy. Knives like consistency. It's probably good for the same person to be doing the honing at the house, because everybody's going to be slightly off, right? It doesn't matter if you're shooting for 15. It doesn't matter if you're at 13 or 16, right? As long as you're always at either 13 or 16. So if two people in the house, one's at 15, one's at 20, you guys are canceling each other out. Yeah.
So when you're using that and trying to keep the same angle, this is at another angle. How do you?
It's just practice. It just practice. Same thing. Keep your wrist locked. You know, the movements here, and you just try to be as machine-like as possible. That's just, you know, it's whatever you're used to. You know, like I was taught back in the day this way, and that's the only way I've done it. So doing it any other way seems very awkward to me, and I am not efficient or consistent this way. But this is all about just, you know, creating habits, muscle memory, all that stuff. So however you want to do it, just keep doing it. You'll just get better and better and better, and you guys will, you know, yeah, and you guys will get into some kind of routine at home where, you know, okay, I know I need to do this once a week, and keeps my knife sharp. Yeah.
So I'm going to stop here, give Eytan 2 minutes of break, and give you guys a chance to move around, move your muscles, and standing up, and gives me a chance to do a couple of announcements. One is that we had people who had signed up for the RSVP.
Oh yeah.
We have a free giveaway of care kit as part of the process. I was looking for care kit here, but basically it's a common steel knife care kit for areas, and as part of that, you know, we give free care kit with any purchase today. And if you haven't signed up, we have the QR codes. I see one on the table there, the black with the QR code, and there's one next to the display there. Feel free to get on there and do a review with interviews in like 5 minutes. Type in and just let me know that you did that. So we decided in 5 minutes to announce the winner on that one. The other thing I want to announce is we have these events actually next week, and every at the last Saturday of every month from 11 to 12 right here. We have events. Next week is actually Chef Dino Francisco from Le Pigeon and Canard. He's breaking down beef and making a little bit of a tartare type thing. And then the following that is November 22nd. We have a pre-Thanksgiving artisan market. It's about 10 or 12 brands that we respect, and quality brand come here, and we'll have Bolivan, our own Francis, organizing that and running that. So that's like a fifth year that we're having that. So another opportunity to bring up the area. We're done with the official part.